Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our special program. If you'd like to know who is sponsoring this program, I just want to make sure that you know, and if you have a chance, you can thank them. Friends are sponsoring us our wonderful program on History of Music presented by Concetta and Ben. They're going to tell you more about themselves, where they're from and what they're doing. But I want to make sure that you know that friends are so good to us and help us to bring all different programs to our Hadley Council on Aging. So Jane is here. You have a chance to say thank you. And thank you for coming, and I will leave you with our audience and let you introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. I'm Concetta and this is Ben. And we are from New York City. We've been on tour for the past 2 weeks. And I'm actually going to put these out so you guys can have a look at them. You can hand them around. This is our tour schedule, so you can see where we've been and where we're going. We're both music teachers in New York City, and we don't have too many students in the summer, so we're taking this time to take our show on the road. And you can see we're playing about 30 shows on this trip, so you can pass these around. So I'm a violinist and a singer and a composer, and Ben is a percussionist and mandolin player and also writes music as well. So we do a survey for you guys, a sampling of music from various centuries, and then we culminate the performance in playing some of our original music, which is contemporary, and so that helps to give a context to the work that we're doing. So the first piece that we're going to play for you guys is by a composer named Orlando Gibbons, 16th century. He was English, and this piece is called Fantasy No. 4, and it's a 2-part polyphonic piece. It's kind of like Row, Row, Row Your Boat, where like one instrument starts and the second plays the same melody, but it starts at a different time. So it's kind of like a complex version of that. We hope you guys enjoy. actually going to skip a century. I'm going to play a solo piece from the suites that were written by J.S. Bach in the 18th century and early 18th century, and they were considered a part of the Baroque era of music, so we're past the Renaissance era now. And I'm going to play the second movement of the cello suite in G major, which is suite number 1. It's the less performed movement. Everybody recognizes the first movement pretty clearly. It's the one that Yo-Yo Ma always plays. So I'm going to do the second movement. The pieces were not actually originally written for cello. They were probably written for an instrument called viola da brasso, which would have been like a cello, that you played it on your knee. And they were sort of forgotten for 200 years, and then Pablo Casals rediscovered them in a music library and figured that they fit super well for cello, and now they're just standard repertoire and everybody plays them. Over the past 50 years, they've become really popular. So the instrument I have here today is 5-string, so it's kind of like a viola and a violin in one instrument. So I'm going to be playing the viola portion of my instrument. So what I'm playing is an octave higher than the way it would sound on a cello, but it's still closer to the range that would have originally been written in. So this is the Allemande, the second movement of the Bach suite number 1 in G major. writes very long musical phrases. Just when you think his musical sentence is done, it just keeps continuing. And I really like to draw on that for inspiration when I write music. when I write a melody, I have to ask myself, what more do I have to say? There's always more to pull out of the story that you're creating through music. So Bach was a church composer. He was a Lutheran musician, and he was a musician in residence at the Thomas Church in St. Thomas Church in Leipzig, Germany. And he was writing music for the divine, and that was where a lot of music was coming from. But now we're going to go more into the Romantic era of the 19th century, where popular music started to develop. And we're going to play a piece by Niccolo Paganini, who's an Italian composer and violinist. And he was really a rock star. He could play really fast, and he had very long fingers. And people actually started a rumor that he was possessed by the devil. And he loved that rumor. He took it as a compliment until somebody tried to assassinate him. And then it was a big controversy when he passed away. The Catholic Church, the local church, didn't want to inter his body, and the Pope had to step in and say that this is ridiculous. And so it was actually a bit controversial character. He was prolific at violin, guitar, and mandolin. And this piece was written for violin and guitar, actually, as a duet, but we've arranged it for mandolin so that Ben could join me. And it's called Cantabile, which literally means song. And it's very romantic and an early inkling towards opera, operetta, and maybe eventually musical theater. So I hope you enjoy this piece. Now we are getting into the modern era. This next piece is written in 1913, a late Impressionist era piece by a French composer named Claude Debussy. And the piece was originally written for flute. It's called Syrinx. And I think that was an ancient Greek, a reference to ancient Greek flute or magical panpipe. So it's pretty mysterious sounding. And I think hinting towards an era where music is more accompanied by visuals in theater and movies. So I hope you enjoy this piece called Syrinx by Claude Debussy. Short 1 minute long piece by Bela Bartok from the 1940s. And it was from a series of 44 duets that he wrote for 2 violins. But we're going to play it with mandolin and violin today. And a lot of his music drew from Eastern European folk music, even though he's considered a classical composer. And you'll hear that when we play this piece, which is called Pillow Dance. And I think it actually sounds like a pillow fight. I'm not sure if that's what it's about. That's my best guess. So, Pillow Dance by Bela Bartok. is actually by a woman composer. Believe it or not, it's kind of tricky to find women composers to program, not because they weren't composing, but because a lot of the time their husbands were credited as the composers. I mean, a lot of people think that Bach's wife, Anna Magdalena, contributed to a lot of his pieces. She certainly was credited as editor, so. But that aside, this is written by a woman who was a Jewish American immigrant, and she came from a family of musicians. Her name was Lillian Fuchs, and I believe her father was a conductor and her brother was a famous cellist. She played the viola, and at that time, viola was not really featured as a solo instrument. It still isn't really today, not that popular to have a viola soloist as opposed to a violin soloist. And a lot of the time, violists, even if they're really amazing players, are drawing on violin repertoire because there's just not that much stuff that's written specifically for viola. So she composed her own pieces for herself to play, and this is from her series of 12 caprices for viola. I'm just going to play the first caprice, and this is just the first one of 12 caprices. She also wrote a series of fantasies for viola. So it's just a minute long, and I hope you guys enjoy this. As the music into the 20th century becomes more global, as you heard in Bartok, he's drawing on some folk traditions. I personally think Lillian Fuchs was probably inspired by American folk music. I think I hear some of that in her music. The next piece I'm going to play is by a composer named Astor Piazzolla, who was Argentinian, and he's considered a classical composer, but he's also considered a great tango composer, and he popularized the Argentinian tango. And so this is the first piece from a series called Tango Etudes, and it was written a couple decades after the Fuchs piece that you just heard. So I hope you enjoy Tango Study No. 1, originally written for flute, but I've been played on violin. the double tonguing, like that stuff is like meant for flute, but it comes across on the violin. Anyway, the next thing we're going to do in this program is we're going to play some original pieces for you guys. Does anybody need to use the bathroom or take a quick break? Okay, so this is the second portion of our program. All of the composers we just played are great influences of ours, among many. We draw really heavily on the genre of art song, and the lyrics are very important to us in this music. We have recordings with us for sale, and we have these poetry chapbooks that we printed that have the lyrics to our songs in them, and you can purchase the CD with it. And we thank you guys so much for listening. These songs kind of weave in and out of each other, so we kind of play them one after another. So it might go for like 20 minutes, so if you have to get up for any reason, we won't be offended. So Ben's going to play percussion, and I'm going to play violin and sing. And the songs are from a combination of song cycles. One is called Falling in Time, which was my 2015 album. And then the next is the upcoming album, which is called Mirror Touch. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of different things we're going to play for you guys. So we hope you enjoy.
Cost more than I make, facing the illusion given to